Hi, this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and today I'm going to be covering a game from the 2011 Russian Team Championships between Fabiano Caruana against Dmitri Bocharov. And so Caruana opens up with, I see him playing, I think I see him playing some d4, but typically an e4 player. And Bocharov plays d6, which is pretty flexible. It can lead into the perk with g6, or with knight f6. Black is kind of indicating that he's going to go into some type of Philidor with e5. And so after knight c3 seems to be a more flexible move, because after bishop d3, e5 is very effective for black as far as equalizing goes. So Caruana plays knight c3, more flexible move here. And after e5, knight f3, knight bd7, and bishop c4. And so something to take note of: if black is not careful in this position and he plays something like a6, this would lead to knight g5 by white piling up on that f7 pawn. And so instead, bishop e7, and now if knight g5, you see queen castles, and no worries on the f7 pawn there. So bishop e7 and castles, and a4. It seems like a preemptive strike here, but a move that serves two purposes. One, it will prevent any kind of further a6, c6, and followed by b5 space grabbing attempts by black on the queen side, and also a potential hiding space for the bishop on a2. So a multi-purpose move, certainly, and gaining a little bit of space for white as well. Maybe a5 can be an idea in the future. And so c6 by black here, maybe introducing the idea of playing knight takes e4 and playing d5 here. Some tactical ideas certainly associated with c6, and also the queen can come out to b6 or a5. So c6, a multi-purpose move itself. And rook e1. So they have very typical moves here. This opening is black is kind of conceding a little bit of space in the center, and white is not trying to force anything too crazy too soon, but he's happy accepting a slight space advantage. And so pawn takes and knight takes d4, and so black wants to get a little bit of space for his pieces in knight e5. And so now bishop a2. And so here, I'm not a huge fan of this opening, especially not these ideas with black taking on d4 and playing the knight to e5, because it just gives white a few tempo as far as attacking on the king side with f4, and maybe any ideas kind of with g4 as well. So specifically f4, and the knight, going back to g6 can be a target again itself. So not a great rerouting plan either there. So now rook e8, trying to probably put some pressure on that e4 pawn, and here h3, a nice preparatory move. Don't want to see any kind of pieces bothering you on g4. And after bishop d7, so this is exactly what I mean. I mean, black is happy with placing the pieces like this, but it's not really trying for any kind of advantage at all, and it's definitely conceding a slight advantage to white for, I don't understand any reason. In the Sicilian, black achieves a double-edged play, but in this, it's kind of like settling for a slightly inferior position and hoping to draw it with minor difficulty at best. So now f4, and the knight is forced back to g6, where it will be a target again by the pawn's advance. And so bishop e3, white just keep it simple, stupid, the kiss method, and develop your pieces in the middle. And so now queen a5 seems to be the only productive really continuation. Maybe bishop f8 could have also been considered here. And the idea of queen to a5, there is the idea of playing the queen to b4 and putting pressure on the b2 pawn, although it's possible, and also swinging the queen over to h5 and maybe some attacking ideas on the king side. And also the idea that black employed in the game with bishop d8, transferring it to b6, a much more attractive diagonal. So queen d3 by white, queen f3 was also a possibility. And now bishop d2, trying to kind of attack that black queen on a5. And if the queen returns, let's say, you know, queen c7 here, well, now bishop d8 and the whole queen a5 foray looks pretty silly. So bishop d2 is kind of putting the question, so okay, why did you really do that? And you know, queen b4 is probably not going to work out too well, a variety of tactical shots. So queen goes to h5, and it seems okay over here, but it seems a little crowded with all these black pieces. And Caruana does a great job of exploiting that immediately by playing f5. So now he's advancing the pawn with tempo, shutting out the black queen, and also misplacing the black knight a little bit. And so knight to e5, yes, this is a fantastic square for the knight, but what does it mean? Bishop b6, a great diagonal, and easily parried by bishop e3. And so the position would be just fine for black. He's got a strong knight on e5, a nicely placed bishop on b6, but his queen is very misplaced on h5, and there's no way he can simply jump it back to e7. So that's definitely a potential cause for concern. And now d5. And so d5, black seeks to sort out matters tactically by opening the center. It definitely makes sense from a logical standpoint. However, it doesn't seem to quite work out because he's taken a few tempi, opening up the position, while white has seemed to develop a little bit more smoothly. And so now bishop f2, and simply defending the e4 pawn. And after queen h6, a little repeating moves to probably gain a little time on the clock for Caruana, maybe figure out exactly what he wants to do. And now the other rook comes to d1 to put a little pressure on the x-ray in the center. And so just playing logically, and maybe a little more forcing was to play the knight to f4, but I don't think it quite worked out in some lines, some tactical lines, with the bishop bearing down on this diagonal. So the rook going to d2 also defends the d4 pawn, or d4 knight. And now d takes e4, trying to open it up. It's hard to recommend anything else. Rook 88 would come to mind, but I think tactically taking on e4 is better. Maybe the queen can come back or get out of danger by taking the pawn on f5. And Caruana plays knight to e2, knight ce2, threatening knight f4, and a variety of threats associated with that. And so black is forced to play bishop c7. Makes sense logically, as he is trying to attack the position of the white queen on g3. However, tactically, I don't think it quite works out, and maybe Bocharov calculated the lines coming up and didn't calculate them to the very end. Maybe he kind of just saw, okay, maybe this works well enough. And so knight f4 now, getting very complicated, and after queen h6, which seems to be a forced move, and knight e6, pretty brilliant move, all things considered, definitely pretty crazy. And difficult for Bocharov here, because white is threatening first the bishop on c7, the queen on h6, and also mate on g7. So he's got three things threatened here at the same time. And yeah, it's pretty tough. I mean, how can black defend the queen on h6, first of all? And so knight f3 seems to be the only answer. A check, also opening up the bishop to the queen on g3. So queen takes f3 seems to be forced, and after pawn takes, bishop takes h6, and now f takes e6. And I guess the point of the combination, more or less, is if pawn takes h6, knight takes c7, and white is up a piece here. It's unclear how long he can exactly hold on to it, but it doesn't matter. If rook takes, similar tactical idea to the game, and the knight comes out, because it takes, and all of a sudden this bishop is a monster. I don't know. I mean, this is very complicated stuff, but I'm assuming that's the idea. And so now f takes, and f takes, and the idea, obviously, to the discovered check on the king is not going to be very pleasant. So bishop c8, and now bishop g5. There was some thought to be given to the immediate e7, but hey, what's the point if rook e7, the knight comes to f5 anyways? So why not just keep the bishop on e6 and inhibit black's pieces as much as possible? And f takes g2, trying to preserve the material balance, I suppose. And e7 check, king h8, and now king takes g2. And now with knight d5, I think the game is just over. And knight b5, bishop b8, and rook takes d5, and now threatening rook to d8 and also rook to f1. And so now with b6 and rook f1, and here Bocharov resigned in view of obviously bishop b7 allows for the immediate rook f8, and if king g8, rook d8, bishop b7 check, king g1, and let's say bishop e5, rook f8 takes, and that's mate. So a fine tactical assault by Caruana, and you know, a very strong young 2700 players. So this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and thanks for listening.